The information and suggestions given in this podcast should not be considered as clinical or medical advice. Consult with a physician before implementing any information provided on this podcast. Metabolic Radio. Okay, welcome to Metabolic Radio. I am one of your hosts, Taylor Empey, and I'm with...
the Metabolic Panda!
Shane Pace. I am on Instagram, the Metabolic Seahorse, and Shane is at the Metabolic Panda. So today we decided...
I couldn't resist that, dude, sorry.
No, you're good. The topic for today is one thing that we think is vitally important that we teach and discuss.
Level.
What's that?
On a fairly basic level, but
Yeah. I mean, it's essential for seeing results. Whether you're male or female, young, old, have injuries or not. The concept of resistance training, and also in relation to that, aerobic training and the roles they play in health and fitness and actually reaching your fitness goals. So, this is a question that many of you might have. Should you be lifting weights? Maybe you're not sure based off of your goals. You've probably heard that...
to stop...
Go ahead, yeah.
To interject really quick, especially in the world of women... Mm-hmm. They have a tendency to not want to be bulky.
Yeah,
is the fear.
That's like the most common word I hear is I don't want to bulk up.
Yep.
So when it comes to that, actually, Shane, I've heard a lot of guys I've worked with that tend to be middle-aged professionals that are like, I'm not really wanting to build a lot of muscle. I'm just I need to lean out. I actually get that quite a lot.
I guess that would be true.
When originally I kind of thought that guys would really be like, I want to build a lot of muscle. So I'm actually kind of getting that on both sides of the spectrum. With just really wanting to be, what's considered fit, right?
Correct.
Lean.
The word, even though it's a false word,
yes,
toned.
Yes,
is the word.
Let's cover that real quick first too, because some of my clients, you're probably listening right now, I have used that word. I cringe inside a little bit every time I do, but I do it to be able to relate to your perception of what that means visually and physically. But toned really isn't. It's not a word. It's a made up word. You either build muscle or maintain muscle or lose muscle. Those are the only things.
It's a perspective thing. I mean, let's be fair. Tone gives you a viewpoint. Mm-hmm. The thing that you don't understand, people don't comprehend, if you will, when they use the word toned, is building muscle is toned.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay, that does make sense. Yeah.
It's not that the word is necessarily false, which a lot of people push out there, but it's misrepresenting. Mm-hmm. And people don't think that they're building muscle.
that tone has this... people associate the thinner muscle fiber, the leaner, smaller look with the word tone.
Correct.
And what that really is, people, is there's different types of muscle fibers that do have varying purposes in the body, and they are different sizes. So, when you've heard probably people talk about, if you want to be quote-unquote toned, you should, if you're going to still lift, you should do high reps, low weight, which there's some truth to that, but that's not the whole story, basically.
Right.
So, think of it this way. You're going to look toned the leaner you are. So you're not, and when I say leaner, I'm referring to body fat, not necessarily weight. The percentage of body fat that you have is going to determine how, quote-unquote, lean you are. And really the level of tone that you want to see is in relation to that. Now, Many of my female clients know I have you lift heavy sometimes. I have you lift very heavy. I have you lift in strength ranges when we're doing performance. when we're focusing on your strength performance, we lift in hypertrophy, which is actually a muscle development phase.
Well, they call that that rep range is usually associated with between 8 and 12.
Yeah.
Different. Okay, so there's really 4 muscle fibers that we deal with. There's technically more when you throw cardiac in there, but you have your slow twitch and you have 3 different fast twitch muscle types. Okay, I'm not really going to go into it in detail on this right now, but we can. I mean, it's not like we can't, but the different fast twitch fibers actually build and react differently to different muscle rep ranges. So when you're talking 8 to 12, you hit one of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much what we want to clarify for you is that, especially in the female community, you need to be doing resistance training if you want to see long-term health results and long-term, body composition changes in the direction that you're wanting to go for, if you're one of those people that typically wants to be quote-unquote toned. Right. So, definitely focus on resistance training, but do not be scared of lifting heavy. Lifting heavy is an essential part of this. And it's not like you're going to touch weights and all of a sudden you're going to look like a bodybuilder on hormones. That's just not going to happen.
No, and that doesn't even happen with guys.
Yeah.
If you talk about being on any kind of anabolic chemical, anabolic being muscle building, but even they don't just balloon. They have to work their keisters off to get big. So exactly. It's not like that's going to come to anybody fast. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you definitely, for a well-rounded physique and performance and just general health, you ought to train in many different ranges. I want to say like rep ranges and working with your different muscle fibers to go for that kind of toned look. So just to dispel that myth, it's going to take a long time for you to see any dramatic change in your muscle size, especially if you're female. So it's one of those things you have to really work at. Your nutrition has to be in that position. Yeah, you have to be in a caloric surplus anyway. So, I mean, okay, you have
he's reacting because I cringed to that statement. But the react. Okay, so I'm going to be edge of.
Well, you've got muscle adaptation and central nervous system.
I'm going to go fringe here for a second. So I have a problem with, and Taylor doesn't know I'm going to go off on this, so he might beat me in a second. But I have a problem with calories. I'm going to say that I don't. I'm not going to call it a myth, but calories in, calories out doesn't calculate calories in, calories out. There's different calorie intake and output depending on what it is you're taking in and going out. When you start talking different dietary plans, when you go high fats, you go high carb. I mean, you have all these low carb, ketogenic. You have all these different dietary systems that are out there that people talk about. And when you're talking about calories, and I'm probably fringing, right? I mean, I'm probably completely going off topic right now. But calories in versus calories out is a misnomer, in my opinion. I think the problem is I think that everybody should count what their intake is, including their calories. But it's not as the science behind it is not as cut and dry as 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the reason why I cringed. I don't want to negate that it's a good gauge. I'm famous for people that talk to me a lot about this kind of stuff for bringing up the fact that the first thing they say is, hey, I'm losing weight. And I say, the scale doesn't matter. The scale's not the important thing, okay? My first question is, so your goal is to lose weight. And they say, yeah, I want to lose this much weight. And I say, okay, that's great. But let's say you gained weight, you felt better and looked better. Would you be happy? And every time they say, if I felt better and looked better, yeah, the weight would matter less. But people are so focused on one tool in their arsenal, being a scale as a representation of what their goals are. And I personally have a problem with that. taking calories as an end result thing on calculations, in my opinion, is a misnomer. So if that's the reason why I want to interject at this point about that, just because it is a tool. It's a tool that you can use to at least give you a gauge to go off of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That and something that we've talked about before, not on here, but Taylor and I have talked about macro and micro nutrients. They're tools. They're tools to an end result, if that makes sense. They're not the end result. And a lot of people focus on calories as the end result. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut in on that.
No, you're good. Like, basically what I was getting at was that your nutritional intake can be managed in a way that will prevent excessive muscle gains. So, basically getting at that if you aren't wanting to bulk up that much, but you are wanting to feel stronger and you are wanting to be more lean and have that kind of more quote-unquote toned look, then, nutrition is one of those things that you can use to have it help control that outcome, basically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like you said, it's a tool.
Right. Nutrition overall is a big deal. I think if you can eat correctly, 99% of the time, you can actually affect your body comp pretty heavily just by nutrition. Even if you didn't exercise, changing your dietary habits is a big deal. Just recomping, And don't get me wrong, my belief system is, and I think yours is as well, is that exercise is a big crucial key. But what I'm saying is nutritionally, absolutely. If you grab nutrition, you go down the right path. Nutrition will lead you in the right direction for sure. Yeah. Alone, again, like I said, tools. These are all tools to an end result.
So one of the main tools we want to talk about today is resistance training,
right?
Because the and as it compares to cardiovascular training of different types. Now, they're both essential components depending on what you want to end up training for or looking like. And that's kind of where it comes down to is I talk to clients and, I had a conversation with a client a couple days or a week ago or something. And they were asking about, what they should be doing for cardio. And I said, well, what's your goal? And I knew what their goal was, but I was refreshing their memory. And they said, well, they said I'm comfortable with how lean I am, and I just really want to have more of a muscular physique. And I said, then a lot of aerobic training just doesn't need to be a part of your program. I mean, are you planning on running a marathon or a half marathon or anything soon? And they said no. And I said, okay, well, you enjoy running for its intrinsic value and the feeling, maybe the endorphin release and things like that, or oxygenating your body, and I can respect that. So I said, why don't you just take a recreational run on the weekend or something, nothing too long or too big, and let's focus on putting your food, especially your weight training, oriented around your muscle development goal. And so that's where, how much should I do cardio versus weights? It really comes down to, one, what is your goal in the first place? And then we can get into deeper levels of what types of those different trainings you should do, because there's varying types of training within both resistance and aerobic.
You have different views that you can take. Just if you use running alone, you start talking about HIIT, which is high intensity interval training, is what it stands for. It's HIIT, which you can do on almost anything. It's not that you have to do it running; you can do it on anything.
Yeah.
Just because you do intervals, you do shallow running, if you will, jogging, even walking, and then you go to full out sprints, and they that's why it's the intensity is where that comes from. But catabolic reactions that come from things such as running for long term, especially in my opinion, is
and just to
detrimental.
Differentiate, what's a catabolic reaction?
Catabolic reaction is something where your muscle basically is eaten for energy, to shorten it extremely.
Yeah.
But that's the easy definition of it. So if somebody runs an extensive amount of time, especially if it's over a certain timeline, I couldn't give you that right off the top of my head, but it becomes the muscle is eaten as opposed to fat cells because it's faster energy. And so when somebody runs a lot, they lose a lot of muscle mass. I know people wouldn't like to hear that run, but that's the reality. If somebody's trying to build muscle, they're actually fighting against themselves when they run.
Yeah.
So, for cardio, in my opinion, and from all the stuff that I've read, the science backs this pretty heavily. But if you're for overall health, lifting weights, you can't beat it. I mean, it's
there was a study that I read that showed a resistance training group as compared to an aerobic training group exclusively, and obviously because cardio does burn more calories initially, the aerobic training group saw faster, immediate weight loss. Now, what percentage of that was body fat, what percentage was muscle, we don't know necessarily, but they showed better results in the short term. However, the resistance training group who saw much more favorable results in the long term, in terms of long-term health, body composition,
right.
And other measurements of health. And so it's one of those things where it didn't take you just a few days, weeks, or months to get out of shape. You most likely have been out of shape for years.
Right, and you're fighting against that because your metabolism slows down, and it changes the nature of how your body reacts to this kind of stuff. There's we're not going to touch on it too deeply, but there's body types that are different than metabolism. Metabolism is something that you can completely control. Mm-hmm. It's something that you can do exercise to actually have it ramp up, if you will, and that changes to go back to the caloric thing, but it changes the caloric intake reaction. So your body needs more calories because it's burning more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your metabolism will change as you're working out, and it slows down over years as you're not working out. So when you're working into stuff, I mean, that's part of your staging. That's kind of when you work into it. Not to side note. I could go off on this for days. So I'll try to control this one.
My job is to keep Shane on track.
Yeah.
Keeps wanting to talk about nutrition. Talk about weights and cardio.
I can go crazy on topics, and that's why Taylor's a good stopper for me.
So yeah, with resistance training, let's talk about the metabolic changes with the two. Pretty much, if done correctly, again with the proper diet, you are going to keep yourself in a more anabolic state, a higher energy state, a faster metabolism. You will have more favorable body composition.
For sure.
If you focus on resistance training.
Absolutely.
So, and again, not to misrepresent cardiovascular training because it is an essential component. It's just really relevant or relative to what you want. And so yeah, give these people some ideas of
let's
in terms of resistance training, what they ought to be doing.
Let's step into first aerobic and anaerobic because some out there won't understand the differences. So aerobic is with the oxygen, and anaerobic is without oxygen
As a fuel source.
Yeah. So what happens is when you're in an aerobic state, you actually the muscle's receiving a lot more oxygenation. My brain's stopping on me, Taylor.
Brain fart.
Yeah, no, it's because I want to go off track. So I'll try to pull it back. So staying in an anaerobic state, you're going to be lifting and pushing more weights, which burns a specific way that causes basically oxygenation to be taken out of it. Weights, body weight exercises,
anything really with applied resistance.
Anything that with a resistance factor that goes against you, yes. So if you're doing push-ups, pull-ups, that's body weight based, it's technically speaking still, and we'll use the word anabolic because anabolic is muscle building, an anabolic type exercise. So you don't have to have weights. People think you have to have weights. If somebody goes into a class and they're doing push-ups and they're doing pull-ups and they're using like TRX type training, with
suspension
straps, right? You're still doing an anabolic anaerobic exercise. Just by the nature of it, if that makes sense. And the muscle fibers that you hit when you do that are very specific to that kind of thing. That's when you start talking about the ranges that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. So people can have the illusion that when they're doing push-ups, they're not building muscle, which is a misnomer.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And with resistance training, it's one thing you want to think about is that not necessarily if your goal is to build a lot of muscle, but take this into consideration. If you're trying to be more fit, you're trying to be healthier, you want to be leaner, you want to have more food freedom, you want to...
For sure.
Yeah. You want to look great and not have to work in like your butt off all the time just to maintain it. You want to be focusing on resistance training because... It varies per person, but basically for every pound of muscle you gain, you're going to burn demand a certain amount more of calories each day. It's going to literally elevate your metabolic rate, which is that minimum daily caloric need that your body approximately needs in order to have normal function each day. So the more lean muscle mass that you have, you're going to have a better buffer because of that higher metabolic rate to be able to do a few things. You potentially have more food freedom and not have it negatively impact you or necessarily be stored as fat. You'll be able to leverage that higher metabolic rate to burn more body fat and kind of shape the physique that you're looking for, if that's what you're looking for. And one thing to clarify too is that some of you listening will maybe just have a health goal or just a performance goal, but the vast majority of people, at least I've worked with, Shane, I don't know about you, have been people who want to work on physique.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody
wants to gain muscle. Now, granted, I will tell you, the guys that I worked with back in the day with football was a little different because they were looking for performance.
That's performance, yeah.
But it was still corresponded with muscle strength and usually with appearance to an extent, even with performance. Performance guys have a little bit different perspective because they want to be able to do a very specific job more efficiently. Yeah. And it changes the nature of your training when you do that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. So now let's talk about different types of cardiovascular training so that people can understand. One thing I like to clarify with clients when I'm working with them is
that's a big open gate.
Yeah. When it comes to anaerobic activity, it's a state of heart rate. You don't have to be on a traditional cardio machine. You don't have to be running or jogging. You can go into a aerobic state, even lifting weights. Oh yeah. You can also not go into an aerobic state when lifting weights.
I hope I didn't misspeak that earlier because I may have said that.
No, you said it correctly. It's just hard to talk about when you're in aerobic, you're in an aerobic state, not in an anaerobic state.
Right,
if that makes any sense. So,
that's true.
So again, just to clarify, anaerobic is without oxygen. That's more of your strength type activities. These activities typically are very short durations.
Yes, which is what the muscle fibers are made for. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about the different muscle fibers, the stuff that you get from running are made for endurance, if that makes sense. The stuff that's made for bursts are made for muscle build, are the ones that you get in muscle building type exercises. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, pretty much you've got different energy pathways that your body will kind of switch the valve to and from depending on the activity that you're doing, and typically something becomes aerobic or cardiovascular type training when you're performing it for longer than about 90 seconds. And that's a rough estimate, but usually your body can no longer accept fuel.
It's burned through a few things too.
I mean, you
start
usually start
with glucose.
Yeah.
Because that's the main source of fuel. But sorry, I'm
so you've got stored ATP, which is energy.
Yep.
After that's depleted, you've got creatine phosphate that is stored also in the muscle that
Right.
those can both be depleted. The readily available sources will be depleted in a matter of seconds, depending on what you're doing. Then it'll go over to glycogen, which comes from glucose, which comes from predominantly carbohydrates, but you can also convert other macronutrients into that.
Right.
And so usually your body...
I mean, if you want to get nutritional, we could go way.
That's true. We could totally shift.
That's a different beast. So I'll stop because I want to jump into that one.
Yeah. So then anyway, then it can shift into utilizing oxygen and fat. So with cardiovascular training, you're utilizing more of a oxygen energy source because of the type of demand that is placed on the muscle fibers due to the activity. And
which is part of why you go into the catabolic state. Because, like I said, one of the most easily acquired fuel sources when you start to deplete is muscle itself. Fats are actually harder for the body to metabolize. So it will, in this state, I guess I should say that, because there's more to that than what I'm defining. But that's why things like running for long distances, actually, you'll notice they're usually very lean, very, very thin is the word I want to use. People that run extensively.
They don't have very much muscle or body fat.
Correct. They run it all off.
Yeah. Your body is an adaptive machine, and it's going to adapt to the stimulus and the stress that you place on it. So obviously an avid runner or endurance athlete or ultra-endurance athlete is going to have a very small build typically, unless there's something else going on metabolically or hormonally, because they've been sending the signal to their body that, hey, we don't lift weights, we don't need to be strong, we need to be really efficient at doing this one little activity.
Times.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's why they tend to be very light, thin individuals.
Right.
So yeah. And with the resistance training, that being kind of the main thing you want oriented in your program, if you're talking about looks. If you want to look good and you want to shape a physique that you're more confident in and you want to be leaner and leverage a metabolism for fat loss, you need to have your program oriented around resistance training.
Well, again, that's perspective. So if you take into perspective the average person when they look at a picture of what they want to look like, it's someone who has more muscle mass. It doesn't matter if it's male or female. Then less. I'm not saying that is everybody, but the majority of people, that's what they're looking for in aesthetics, okay, in visuals. So building muscle makes more sense when it comes down to that for that reason. But certain people may want to be thinner. So it depends. Again, it always comes back to your goals. Now I'm not sure if we're going to get into this in depth, but I think the timing of cardio is also kind of a key.
Absolutely.
But before I hit that concept, I'll kind of let Taylor talk more about that for a second. But I wanted to touch base on
brain fart?
No, not brain fart. Sorry. Yeah, might as well have been because I went silent. On what muscle does for you. So when you gain muscle, it takes substantially more more energy to sustain muscle on a body than it does to sustain fat on a body. So if you have more muscle mass, by sheer nature itself, it will, because your body runs less efficiently. As weird as that is, most people want their bodies to run more efficiently. They don't. Yeah. The less your body runs efficiently, the more fat you burn, because you actually can. It takes more energy to run a body. If a car runs more efficiently, you run less fuel. So if you have a body that runs, and if we go into body typing, which people are mixed on if they believe in it, but which I'm not going to do today. But if you go into that, a body that runs more efficiently will have more fat. A body that runs less efficiently will have substantially less fat, and the reason why is because their body wraps up so much more, they absorb more foods.
Yeah, the energy demand. You want to be an energy burning machine. You want to be less fuel efficient because we're trying to recruit that available
instead
fuel
of store it.
That's on your body. Yeah, in order and burn it
Right.
That's what the whole goal is.
Absolutely.
So you, figuratively speaking, and not necessarily literally in size or anything, you want a non-fuel efficient muscle car performance for your metabolism.
Right. And if when we talk more on body typing stuff, which I'm old school, so that was something that's been around for a long time, and I'll go into the history in a little bit on that in the future, not in this podcast. But when we go into it in more depth, we'll cover this pretty deep, because this is something that I think people misrepresent when they talk about body typing. It's a misinterpretation. Now, granted, again, I'll go into the history, so I get sidetracked on that pretty easily. But that's why when you build more muscle, your metabolism changes. It's not because your body type changes, your metabolism changes. It makes it so that it's a less effective machine because you have more energy requirements by your body. So if you build muscle, it actually, the same size muscle in a pound, the same weight of a pound of muscle to a pound of fat, the size ratios are hugely different.
Yeah. And
so if somebody's gaining muscle, they're not going to become big, monstrously bulky people. They're going to become leaner, and they're going to lose more size than they'll gain in the same ratios. So and like I said, the metabolism's wrapped up, so they actually become less effective in how they run. They're less efficient in how they run their energy resources, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you made about the actual composition and makeup of the body fat and muscle cell structure, what it looks like on the body. Because if any of you are curious, many of you who are my clients that are listening right now, I've shown you that picture. Just go to Google, go to images, type in muscle versus fat. You'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Absolutely, the size ratios.
It's ridiculous how different it looks.
Right.
Not only just kind of the visual and textural makeup, but the actual size. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's entirely possible for you to stay the exact same weight that you are right now, and yet drop and drop and drop inches and become tighter and more firm and stronger, which is what a lot of you want.
Right, which is what people represent as tone.
Yeah,
that's where the term kind of came in.
I mean, realistically, the amount of people that are listening right now are slightly overweight. There's probably not too many of you that are obese,
right.
And there might even be some of you that are in a normal BMI or body mass index, which is just a height to weight ratio. You probably are fine on the total amounts of pounds that you have for your body, except the ratio of those pounds might be higher in body fat, and that's why you're dissatisfied with maybe the way you look or perform. So don't necessarily fixate on weight all the time. The thing you need to focus on is that ratio of body fat to muscle, and be okay if you go up 5 pounds in your first month of training because you decided to touch weights. That is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Take a body fat test, and if your body fat percentage decreases and your weight goes up, that is a good thing.
Well, and I'll even give you an easier test to go on. So getting caliper tested, going and getting skin folds tested, and or taking a
bioelectrical
impedance, which is terrible, but it's something. It's another scale. But if you take those, it'll give you something to work against.
Yeah.
But
that's better than a scale.
That's better than a weight-based scale. So it's still technically a scale, because anything you put on a thing is a scale. It's a measurement, right? But if you measure your waist, alone, it will be astronomically evident when you're losing weight.
Yeah.
Because if your measurement, your waist goes down and your weight goes up, you're gaining muscle. Mm-hmm. If your waist goes up and your weight goes up, you're gaining fat. It's that simple. It's very simple to actually gauge it off of that alone. You won't know exact, but if it goes down at all, you're gaining muscle and you're losing fat for sure. Yeah. If that makes sense.
I even had one of my other female clients that I've started working with in the past few months. We did a measurement recently, and she saw her inches decrease. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly which sites on her body, but she saw inches decrease in favorable areas. Her weight actually went up.
Right.
because we were focusing on some muscle building, because we're trying to build a better metabolism for her, and that's what people should be focused on, and that's why we want you to focus on resistance training for your long-term health and metabolism.
Absolutely.
But she was actually satisfied. I do measure using bioelectrical impedance, which is the handheld silver pad type device. I do that because it's a quick way to get a general idea.
It's a scale.
Yeah.
It gives you something.
But yeah, sure, it's not the most accurate. However, so like I said, her weight went up, her inches went down, and she was happy because we're focused on, hey, you know what? I feel thinner or leaner.
Right.
I feel better. I have more energy. I'm stronger, like a hell of a lot stronger. And she was starting to tighten up in areas she wanted to, especially like her glutes. That was one area that she was wanting to work on.
Right.
Ladies, I know that's an area of focus, whether we talk about it or not. I know that can be a quote unquote problem area for some people, or just an area of focus. And so we want to really dispel the stigma that weight training is a male thing, because it's not, and that weight training will make you bulky, because it won't. Without some serious time investment and supplementation and hormones all this other stuff.
The difference in hormones between males and females makes it so dramatically more difficult for a female to become large.
Absolutely.
It's not that they can't become fit, and it's not because they can't gain muscle. They just can't become bulky in the same ways that a male can. And it's not easy for males. I mean, don't get me wrong at all. It's not easy for anybody to get bulky. It takes a lot of work for anybody to get bulky at all, even if they want to. So, that's something that shouldn't be a fear. This being one of the main, this is our first real conversation about anything dealing with fitness. But this is the reason why Taylor and I were actually wanting to do this podcast. These podcasts that we're going to be doing moving forward, is we want this kind of information so that people understand it more. It's not that we don't feel like it's been touched on by other people, but we want this out there to the masses, that don't be afraid of this.
Absolutely.
It's something that we want to see. The weird line in the gym. Okay, there's a weird line in the gym, and guys don't want to cross it to go over the cardio machines, and women don't want to cross it to come over to the weight room.
Yes.
And we want that line to go away, because the honest to goodness truth is, I'm not a big fan of cardio. I think in general, my belief is cardio is 99% of a waste of time. That's an opinion, okay? But that being said, there's definitely valid points to it. It helps you burn fat a lot faster. If you use it in conjunction with weights, it actually will change your look, your appearance really fast in comparison, if you know what you're doing with it. I mean, I did it when I first met Taylor. That's what I was doing. And he used to give me grief about it, as a matter of fact. I don't know if you remember that or not. But,
yeah.
But he asked me why I was doing it. But, I mean, if you use it correctly, it's a great tool. All these are tools. Everything's a tool. When you talk about scales again, you go back to the idea of losing or gaining weight. It's a tool, and it shows you something, but a better tool for overall health, as weird as this is the mirror. If you go and you look in the mirror and you say, I'm looking better, I feel better, and people start commenting to you, the scale is irrelevant. I know people want to go jump on it because they're curious, but the reality is again, it's just a stinking tool. It's not the end goal. And I wish people would get past that, Step over the line. Don't be afraid of weights. Step over the line, move over it, start playing with weights. Going heavy in the weight room is perspective anyway. Someone who goes over and we'll take dumbbells as an example, and they start throwing dumbbells around, doing any of the exercises, whatever, it doesn't even matter what it is, curls, bench press, whatever, dumbbell presses. Heavy to them might be 10 pounds. Heavy to them might be 5 pounds. But if they can control it, is the important side of this. It's not the weight. Going heavy is irrelevant, in my opinion. Heavy is complete perspective. And to one person, heavy is going to be 10 pounds. To another person, 200 pounds isn't going to be a heavy. And so it's all in how you look at it. You may look at somebody and say, holy crap, they're going heavy. And for them, they may be going light, and be completely controlled. Especially when somebody steps over the line and starts trying to lift weights or is over lifting weights. I don't care if they've been there before. it's about control. It's about range of motion. It's about doing it in the most effective technique. And that's what makes weight training such a larger knowledge-based thing than cardio, is you have to understand how you're doing things and doing it correctly. That's why, we were going to talk about personal trainers and picking one, and we're not going to do that today, but that's why people like personal trainers, or a very good person who's been in the gym doing it for long term, is important, because they can help someone to do the exercises correctly. Doing it incorrectly, you have more risk of injury, if that makes sense.
A qualified trainer.
Qualified trainers are substantial. Yes. It's more
that just as a little blurb clarification. We'll get into the details.
I will give you that.
Later,
That's true. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that just the one thing I want to end on today is, like you said, crossing over the line, that invisible line of this pretend boundary that people, and the stigma that people have kind of, and in the media too sometimes, has created.
Everybody.
Think of it this way. Ask yourself this question. Am I satisfied with my body the way it is right now? And if the answer to that is no, then whatever you're doing isn't necessarily working unless you're currently seeing progress. So be open to change. Be open to trying something new. Cross over the line. If you've been walking on the treadmill for the last few months or since New Year's resolutions, and you maybe saw some initial weight loss and you've plateaued, go into the weight section. What's the worst that can happen? Nothing. Like, you're literally just going to try something new, and if it doesn't work for you, then you can go back to what you were doing, but you will respond.
And I'm going to add a little bit to that. I don't want to take anything away from what he said. I just want to add to it. It's not a but, it's an and. And I'm going to tell you that even if you see results and you're happy with where you're going and you're running and you're happy and things are going in the right direction, step over that line anyway.
Good point.
The whole point is the reactions. You're going to be much happier, guaranteed overall, with a reaction if you will walk into the weight rooms and start throwing the weights around.
If you're seeing results right now with aerobic training, adding in resistance training is only going to help. It's going to expedite the process.
Absolutely.
So don't even think of it as like, oh, I'm ditching this modality and I'm going to a different one. You're literally just going to create a more well-rounded program for yourself.
I like that.
By
That's
doing
absolutely right.
So anyway, so we wanted to talk about those concepts for you today. And we'll be back with more information next time.
That works.
Okay, have a good day.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Metabolic Radio. Check out our fitness guides at metabolicradio.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Metabolic Radio, and follow us on Instagram at Metabolic Radio, at the Metabolic Seahorse, and at the Metabolic Panda. Metabolic Radio.